Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Epcot International Festival of the Arts. Oh my gosh, I just can't believe it's already that time of year. Who has been here last year? This is one of the best events. I adore it so much. It's so inspiring. How many artists do we have? A wannabe artists, inspiring artists, training artists, future Disney animators? Cool. Well, my name's Lon Smart. I've been with the company about 30 years as an artist. I've been working for Walt Disney Feature Animation, worked on a bunch of movies, everything from Lion King all the way through Princess and the Frog. And now I work for Disney Live Entertainment, which is a division of Imagineering. We do a whole lot of designs for the parks. For instance, one of my projects was the 50 golden statues that are kind of adorning all around the park, which is a lot of fun. So what we're doing now is I want to show you how to not draw a character, but how to draw so you can draw anything. Now, the best way to learn how to draw is to practice every single day. So what we're going to do today, since it's the first day of Festival of the Arts, is we're going to draw Figment, because he's the mascot hero of the event. A lot of Figment fans? Yes, I love you all. So the first thing we do whenever we start out is we have to reference. I've drawn Figment 1,000 times, maybe more, but I always check out something that we call a model sheet. So I'm going to leave this up here next to me. The reason why we use a model sheet is because we always want to improve. Whenever you draw, it's good to study. If you're drawing from your imagination, you're not learning. So you want to learn as you go. So every drawing that you do is better than the last one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out a couple of sketches, watch what I do first, and then you follow along, okay? So let's make sure this looks okay. You can see everything fine? Good. This is my model sheets. I'm ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to draw the head of Figment. This is a little kickoff. We start out with simple shapes. We try to think about the character being three-dimensional. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly sketch in a circle, real lightly. Now we're going to get darker as we go, but for now, lightly sketch, and then we'll kind of clean up our lines, and it'll be a little bit nicer, prettier looking towards the end. Now notice where I put it on the page. It's not a giant circle like this, it's not a teeny weeny circle. It's about that big. And again, since we're drawing lightly, don't worry about making a mistake because you can just continue to sketch. People like that underdrawing, that sketchy look. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to start identifying the front and sides of the character. So I'm going to draw like an equator line. Basically, it's going to be a curved line just kind of showing, thinking of the character as three-dimensional, like a basketball. And maybe we're going to do a little front line right here. And again, we are not worrying about it being perfect. If we're going to draw this character perfectly, it's going to take an hour, sometimes even longer, because of a lot of details. We're just studying, we're practicing, so if it doesn't look perfect, don't worry about it. We'll all get better. I'm always learning every day. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start, I always work on the nose next, because the nose kind of helps to excuse me, identify where the character is going to be looking. So if we notice here on the model sheet, he's straight ahead, and when it's off to the side, it's off to the side like that. So now look at me. If I'm going to be turning the character to the side, I have to think about the character a little bit on a profile. So I'm going to think shapes, again, like we're sculpting the drawing. So I'm going to draw just a line here. I'm going to look at what we got. I'm going to use that one mostly as my reference here. And I'm just going to start drawing in a little bitty oval just to start filling in some of that shape. Okay, you got that? You got that? Good. So I might also start throwing in the neck right now. If you notice, his neck actually doesn't come out of the bottom of his head. It actually comes out of the back of his head a little bit, right down the lower half. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to do a couple of sketch lines just to identify where that neck's going to be. Because he's going to be looking off to the side. Okay. I'm also going to have I'm tipping his head towards us just a little bit. Here it's a bit away. But I'm always going to be referencing back to my references here. I'm always going to like learn and check things out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the eyes. As you can see, his eyes are really big and round, and they're also really close together. So let's go ahead and really lightly sketch in. Don't worry about details yet. We're just going to block in, a little look and learn. Those big round eyes. We're just finding those shapes, We're going to go back over these shapes again. But this is just a rough sketch. We're rough sketching it in. Okay? Now let's go ahead and find where that cheek is. When he smiles, his smile goes all the way to the back of his head almost. He's got a nice wide smile, so I'm gonna identify that with a little line right here. See where I'm drawing it? It's almost in the halfway between the side of his eye and the back of his head. And that's just gonna be where his cheek's gonna be. And then, I'm gonna bring that smile down. If you notice, it actually curves down, bends back up, and then levels out when it gets to the tip of the nose. So real lightly, a line that I will change right to about there. And again, it doesn't have to line up just yet. We're gonna find those shapes. Okay, now let's go back into the nose. If you notice, his nose actually bridges down, and it actually doesn't really meet the tip of his nose until halfway past what we're gonna call his beak, like a bird. So I'm gonna draw a sketchy line right about here. And then you notice it actually has a bit of a ball at the end, but it comes to a point. This is a nice reference, this is a nice reference. So I'm gonna go up like this, and back down like this. So it does have a bit of a point to it. Okay, starting to see the character come out of it at this point, so that helps. When you're starting to see the character, it's easier to continue on. It's like, oh, okay, this is starting to make sense to me now. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to start working on the eyebrows. You notice his eyebrows go way up over his head. Now, similar like Mickey Mouse and Goofy, they all have that same kind of formula. So I'm just going to sketch in a light line right here and right here above the eyes, little half circles, just to indicate where those eyebrows are going to go. And we're going to start shaping the character a bit more as we move forward too. So again, look at what I do and then you do it. That's how I learn a lot. I'll watch other artists over their shoulder and I'll be like, oh, that's how you do it. So the next thing we're going to do is his chin. His chin isn't at the end of his head like Goofy. He has a really big chin right up front. His is actually more towards his neck. So we're going to drop that down right around here. And it's going to come up and then taper out really close to the tip of his beak. Right like that. So we've got a hanging part here where his jaw is, near his throat. Then go really close to that part right there. All right. Okay. Next up, I'm going to work on the rest of that cheek. Notice now, we drew the bottom of the cheek, but his cheeks, when he smiles, they're really big. And they actually push some of his eyes. The bottom of his eyelid actually gets pushed up when he smiles. So we're going to think about that. And I'm going to draw the mass of the top of that cheek, which is going to be right here. And it's going to come down, and it's going to cover the bottom of his eye, because when he does that, it really shows that he's got a super happy smile going. So we're not going to see all of the bottom of that eye. And the same thing on the other side. Now, even though we can't see it on this drawing because he's tilted away, he's tilting up just a bit more. So we are going to see a little bit of that cheek on the other side of his head, like that. All right, now we got the base of it down. One thing we can do right now also is we can bring in those horns. Now the horns do point out. You can kind of see when you're working on a model shoot with a head turn, you can see that they point out when they're facing you, and they look like they're both going in the same direction when they're back, but we know from this drawing that they actually do taper out a bit. So I'm going to draw out two lines, a curved line that bends down, and then another line that bends up. And that's going to be our, we'll call it the spine for that shape. And then the next one, remember, it's now facing a bit further away. It's not going to have quite as much of a turn. So we're just going to do a little bit of a line. And remember, it connects down to the back of his head, right there. And it is a cone. So now we can go back in and sketch in a little bit more of a shape, really thin at the tip. And then if you notice also, the lines basically are taking a shape. This is the details now. We're getting into the details already. On the top of it, you notice how the line bends in, and at the bottom of the horn, it bends up. So it's not like a tube. It's more like a melting cone, I suppose, like a waffle cone. I always tend to relate my shapes to food. I must be hungry. It is lunchtime. I'm going to do the same thing on the other horn. So we've got a shape that goes like this, and then again, it curves in, and then it curves up. Those little details might seem trivial, but they make all the difference sometimes. It really makes the character recognizable. And sometimes you look at a character and go, that doesn't look exactly right. Well, sometimes that might be the case. So it's the big shapes and the little shapes. It's the details and the big picture. All right, so now we're going to start back over. We're going to start polishing our lines up. We're going to go ahead and hit the eyes. So what I'm going to do is, noticing that they're really close to each other, but his head is a little turned, but we still do see a little bit of space between the two. I'm going to start at the top of the eye here, and I'm going to start clarifying that line just like this. Now if you notice, I don't do a lot of swift, confident lines. I'm more of a sketchy artist, but they do get a little bit more confident as I go. Whether you're really good at swooping those lines down and getting them just right the first time, you're that person. I wish I could be you. I'm not that person. But I do just kind of almost like I'm coloring in the line as I go. And the thickest line on the character is always going to be the eyebrow, or the eyelid. Believe it or not, that's the lines. Of all the lines, the thickest one will always be the eyelid. We'll see this on Disney characters. And we're going to do the other eye here. And remember, there's a little bit of space between the two. Now, when the eye is further away, now the head is turned, it's going to be a little bit smaller and a little bit more narrow, because that's perspective. When things get further away, they look like they're a bit smaller. So we're actually going to make this eye a little bit thinner. Just like that. And we have the option of either bringing that eyelid in or out. Since he is going to be facing in a direction, we're going to do that. We're going to have everything on his face facing in a direction, so that upper eyelid, that eyelash, is going to also be pointing that way. All right, I'm going to go back up to the eyebrows now, and I'm going to start cleaning up that shape a bit more. And I got to think about how the side of his head is shaped. So watch what I do here. I'm going to bring this eyebrow down, and it's actually going to tuck in behind his eye, because his eye is really large. And it's still traveling back there. We're just not going to see it as much, and it's going to connect into the cheek. So there's a lot of action. You got to think about the shapes behind other shapes. Especially if you're going to be animating the character and the head moves around and turns, you got to think about everything that's happening on that head, regardless of whether we see it or not. Okay? And now we're going to do the bridge of his nose. We're going to work our way down to the bridge. Now you notice how that bridge breaks around just about a little lower than halfway down, and then comes forward, just like that. And it's going to stop right around there. And then it's going to pick back up to that rounded part of his beak and come down. I'm actually going to make it a little bit larger, because now that I can see the character a bit more with a darker line, you notice how those light sketchy lines are starting to fade away, because the dark line is becoming more dominant. Okay? Now I'm going to work on his cheek again. I'm going to go back to the corner of his mouth, and now if you notice his cheek, big cheeks all the way around underneath his eye. So I'm going to create a line. Watch what I do. That travels all the way here, and thinking about it three-dimensionally, this shape is actually going to go all the way up and wrap somewhat around the top of his beak. Just like that. But we're not going to see it as intensely. It's just going to be mostly dominant on the side of his face. So let me go ahead and darken this line up so you can see what I'm talking about. But regardless, it's still that anatomy of the character, and even though we know it's there, we're not going to draw it quite as heavy. So you hit that line, and then let's go ahead and darken in that line under his eye, the one that the cheek that's getting pushed up over his eye because of his big smile. And then, speaking of that smile, now he's a dragon. Dragons have lots of skin, so they get wrinkles. So we're going to do a little bit of a wrinkle right here at the corner of his mouth. It's one of those traits of the character. And I'm going to draw down that smile. And remember, it droops down, then it comes back up right around the middle of his beak, and then smooths out. But it does wrap around the outside of that shape to meet up with the front of the bill. Okay? Going back down to the chin, working our way from the top to the bottom. That chin of his really close to the neck. Now a thick and thin line makes all the difference here. It also helps to show weight of the character. So when you're at the bottom of a shape like this, that's typically when the line is the thickest. And when it's towards the top, it gets a little bit thinner. You can feel the shape of the character even if there's no shade or shadowing on the character. So if you got to draw a shape, the bottom lines where the shadow would be the thicker line. And this just makes for a more appealing drawing as well. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and finish the back of that cheek. Nice dark shape here, going all the way around the back. And I might even sketch in a little more of the back of his head here. Nice and round. That was a good time to add those pupils. He actually doesn't have giant eyes. His pupils aren't very, very large. So we can draw them in any expression. Let's say we want him looking up into the sky like he's going to be dreaming. So it's good to have the focus inwards on the eyes just a little bit, because if they're right in the middle of the pupil, he's going to look like he's had like 5 espressos and he's really caffeinated. So we're going to draw them up. He's looking up into the sky. He's dreaming about something. Probably dreaming about art, what he's going to paint next. Now, one thing I'm going to do here for a detail, look what I'm doing. I'm actually adding in a little bit underneath the eyebrow, because that's going to be, like we all have, we have our eyes and we have our eyelid. Our eyelids don't fold into the back of our heads. They actually have a little bit of a space from the top of our eyelid into the eyebrow, into our eye sockets. So that's what he's going to have as well. So a little bit of space between the bottom of his eyebrow to his eyelid. And then I'm going to move my line a little. And the top of his eyebrow is going to be a lot thicker, and it's going to taper together. You notice how these two lines are a lot closer together here? Then they separate up. It's a nice thick and thin shape. And let's go ahead and connect the top of that line. Thank you. Remember, that little line is going to be working back there, so it's going to connect towards the back. Okay? Since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and sketch in some of that neck. Let's go ahead and make that line a little more solid. I'm just going to have it fall off into the page. And again, he's a wrinkly character, so we're going to add another wrinkle line right around here. He's got nostrils. He's got to smell all that great food in the park. So we're going to draw a little line here for this far nostril. And then, let's see what we got here, looking at our reference, looking at all the references. Yep, very good, very good. Now these references, of course, we can find model sheets, or if you just maybe see some, like on a t-shirt in the park, take a picture of it, you know? Find inspiration as you go. I have on my phone tons of drawings that I get inspired by, and I always have them on the ready to look at and inspire me wherever I need it. Inspiration is the key. And the top of the nostril here, I'm just going to draw another line just to show the anatomy of his nose. And one of the last things I'm going to do, let's go back into the horns. We're going to make a nice solid line. Remember, these two lines bend towards each other, but when we curve that line to show the top and the end of this horn, they actually will both bend down like this. And then come to a round. It's not a pointy horn. It's actually a bit rounded at the end. And of course, he's got some scales on his horn, so we're going to draw one right here. And that's going to help show the mass. So drawing a little curved line like that really helps show that it is a round horn and it's not flat. And then the other horn, it's a bit of a different angle, just to show that it's facing away. I might not even see the bottom of that because it's behind that eye. And a couple of lines to show that and that. Some other details we can throw in at this point. More wrinkles. He's got another wrinkle on his nose. Mushu the dragon, which is one of the characters I worked on also, had one of those wrinkles on his nose. So we're going to draw another wrinkle right here, just like that. And of course, the scales. He's got these little spine scales right there. They're about this far apart. We'll do 3. 3 is a magic number. So with that, you can continue on. You can draw more of the body. There's so much you can do. But that is basically just an approach on how we draw any of the characters. So you don't have to know how to draw a character, but you don't have to know how to learn how to draw a character. And it's all about looking and learning. And there's one more thing you got to do now, once we're basically done with this, is sign your art right down here. Very important. Sign it away. And that's how we draw a character like Figment. So what I want to see now, oh, thank you. What I want to see now is your artwork. Hold it up. I got to show you mine. Let's see what, wow, okay. I'm impressed. Okay, you are artists. You came in here acting, no, I'm not really an artist. Oh no, and then you show it off here. I got gaslit really bad right now. Look at this. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. This is brilliant. You got the whole, you drew the whole thing. Oh, you went, I'm not waiting for this guy. I'm just gonna draw the arms and the wings. I want to see what you got over here. Oh, wow. Oh, you guys. Okay, y'all gotta give this to me now. I get all of them, I'm gonna sell them on eBay. Come on, that's great. You draw a lot, I can tell. Well, you're all fantastic. So with that, I got a couple of minutes left before they drag me away, just maybe 2 minutes. A couple quick questions. What you got? Anything about, if you're an artist and you want to ask a question about Disney or something like that? Yes, sir? The most difficult character to draw, I got 2. Mickey Mouse, because he makes no sense. His ears don't turn to the side. They're always straight on, and his nose moves up here when he's to the side and drops down here. Another one is Beast. Beast is, oh my gosh, there's so much going on with that character. Anyone else? One more? Yes. My favorite character to draw? Well, Mickey and Beast, because they're the challenging ones. I'm constantly forcing myself to improve. The more you draw, the better you're going to get. It's the only way you're going to do it. And remember, study and learn. And you can get so inspired. Inspiration is everything. It's like the food for the soul. And there's nothing but inspiration here at the Festival of the Arts. So go out and get inspired. And thanks for playing along. I hope you had a good time.
Friends, thank you for joining us for this presentation of the Animation Academy. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at the Epcot International Festival of the Arts.